to save America?
So I'm running for Congress. Obviously, we're doing everything we can to make this happen. My background's in counterterrorism and national security. So for a while, I felt that I really need to serve in Congress. That I'm through screaming from the outside, and I need to be on the inside. And I would make an immediate impact on national security and foreign policy when I serve.
That's such an important point you made. You're on the outside, and I know a lot of people who are just tired of throwing their shoes at the TV. They're just tired of being frustrated. They got to get up off the couch and go do something. And you've run before, correct? That was a number of years ago.
Yeah, I was the Republican nominee against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and it was a good experience, but it was an uphill battle. Yeah. It was less than 25% Republican registration, but I am proud to say that I got close to 41% of the vote, which at that time was a monumental number. But this new seat that I'm running for, it's close to 50-50 Republican Democrat, and I believe I'm going to be sitting in the U.S. Congress come this January.
So you're in the primary. The Florida primary is in August, and you've got a shot because you've done this before. You've got the experience. You know how not the game is played. You know how the sausage is made. You kind of know where to go and who to talk to, and you get the message out. So you got that experience. Who's in that seat right now?
Jared Moskowitz. He's a one-term Democrat.
Yes, he's going to be a one-term Democrat. So he's, I think you said earlier, he's part of the sneaker squad. What is the deal?
Yeah, if you look at his social media, I mean, every single photo op that he does, he's wearing a brand new pair of Nike Air Jordans or whatever they are. They don't look like anything you see in the stores. They're probably like a couple $100 each, and probably have to mail order those things. So he's very into his sneakers, but I'm into saving the country.
Right. Everyone's trying to make a name for themselves in a certain way and stand out in some capacity. And he's doing that with his sneakers, and you're trying to do it with an understanding of national security, as you say. Where did that history come from? What's your background?
So I do counterterrorism research, writing, and lectures. I've been involved in the shutdown of terrorist charities and the imprisonment of terror-related individuals. I've helped Homeland Security and the Department of Defense and the Secret Service and the FBI go after those who threaten us. I was the one that got the pro-Hamas conference shut down that was to take place at the Coral Springs Marriott this past January, and also it's in the news now. I supplied the information to the state of Florida on a radical imam and actually dentist who called for an annihilation of Jews. I was concerned that this imam runs a private school out of his mosque, and this private school gets tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer-funded vouchers. And I don't believe that any institution that teaches hatred against Jews or Christians or anyone else should deserve one penny of our taxpayer funds.
Goodness gracious. So you've been at this a while, and you've been paying attention. You understand the trends. You know where to go, to where to research, and it seems like that voice is definitely needed in DC.
Absolutely, and I would say that my background is very unique to, there are people that have been in the military in Congress. God bless them. There are those who have been involved with intelligence, but my background is very unique, and I would be able to make an immediate impact on things like foreign policy and national security. God willing, I'll be serving.
And speaking of national security, the border. I mean, I saw a picture. I was scrolling through your website. You had a picture with Tom Homan from a few years ago. So you're paying attention to the border. How many people are coming across the border unvetted?
I mean, we know that millions are coming over every year, right. and the vetting process is barely anything, especially for this administration. And we know that there are terrorists coming over the border, and gang members and human traffickers and drug dealers, and that's just not acceptable. My wife came here by way of Peru and Israel. She spent years with making very little money, just because of the fact that she wanted to experience the freedom of America, and she's offended at people coming over the border illegally. She sees it as people not looking for freedom, but in search of a free ride. My great
Mm,
grandparents came to this country legally, and they spent years working on their citizenship. And when they received their citizenship and became Americans, they kissed the ground before them. And thank God that America opened her arms to my great grandparents, or because they would have perished just like a good part of my family in Europe, and I wouldn't be here speaking to you. So I owe everything to this country, and I look forward to helping President Trump make this country great again.
I'm hearing that story often where people who had come over here legally, and it is an arduous process. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time. It's like our legal system is a deterrent. That's why so many are heading by foot across the border just to break that law and come over. But I'm hearing that story often where someone who came here legally, Hispanic communities, let's say in Arizona and Texas, and they're really upset about the border. You would think that they would, but we're hearing that time and again. They're upset about the illegals coming over.
Sure, what you have to question. You had spent all of this time and money on immigration attorneys, and having to deal with maybe someone who's sponsoring you that doesn't treat you all that great. I mean, thank God my wife had an all right time with her sponsorship, but I've heard horror stories. But people who want to experience the freedoms of America, they're willing to go through that to become Americans. And for people to just cross the borders and think that they're going to get, welfare from our
Right.
country, from our taxpayers, and not pay any dues whatsoever.
Right.
Even some consider, not working, just they're going to live off of the government, and that's not right, and it's not fair to those who came here legally, and it's not fair to any American.
Right. Absolutely. I'm looking at your website, and it's kaufmanforcongress.com. And right there in your issues page, I love this sentence in your first paragraph from America First. You said, "I refuse to let my daughter bear the burden of someone else's irresponsible fiscal and political decisions." So many people are so short-sighted. Well, if we challenge the Federal Reserve, if we challenge the inflation, if we challenge the printing of money, if we challenge these things, it's going to hurt right now. If we challenge our debt and try to do and actually solve the problem, it's going to hurt bad right now politically. So therefore, they kick the can down the road. And you say what to that?
Look, I'm a product of the 70s and 80s. I remember the Jimmy Carter presidency. I remember the waiting on the gas lines with my mom for 2 hours. I remember the Iran hostage crisis. We got our newspaper every day, which said, the next day, day 300, day 301, day 302.
Right.
I remember the massive inflation under Carter. I was personally raised by my grandparents. I remember clipping coupons with my grandparents as a result of the surge in inflation. And I see today as being eerily similar. You have the raise in prices and in gasoline. Yes, there's no hostage crisis in Iran. That's with Israel to right now. But Iran's about to get nuclear weapons, and that seems to be certainly worse. And then today I find myself once again clipping coupons. My daughter is growing up in a time where she has to know what BOGO means. Buy one get one free at the supermarket. The BOGO price today is double the price or
Right.
it's the same price of what the regular price was two years ago. So we're feeling the problems, and it seems to be very similar to what happened in the past. But in the past, somebody named Ronald Reagan came in and changed the whole thing for the better. and our country was doing great under Reagan. And
Yeah.
I believe Donald Trump is going to come back in very soon and change this country for the better once again. And I look
And
forward to standing by him every step of the way.
when you ran before, tell me about the excuse me, an endorsement with
So
Trump.
I'm proud to say that I was one of the few or a handful of congressional candidates around the United States to
Mhm.
endorse Donald Trump for president prior to the 2016 presidential primary.
Mm.
And I remember it well. And the Trump campaign actually used my endorsement of him because I was a Florida candidate. And remember, there were other Florida candidates for president, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, and I remember them using my endorsement to say, "Hey, look at this guy. He's from Florida and he's endorsing Trump."
Right.
But I stood on the stage with President Trump behind him in 2011 when he
Wow.
spoke in Boca Raton to the Tea Party. And I remember when I was in college and my good friends had introduced me to this book, The Art of the Deal, where it showed that one man's belief in himself can move mountains. And I remember growing up in New York where the Trump name was huge.
Yeah.
Like the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building or the World Trade Center. You always saw that word Trump.
Yeah.
It meant something, and it
Yeah.
means something today.
You had also looking on the website talking about education and school choice and vouchers and this kind of a thing. Now, I just talked to a dear friend of mine in Texas, and she was saying that the recent Republican state of Texas Republican Party platform, they just had the convention, and they have a line in there that says "school choice with no strings attached," because a big concern in a lot of conservatives' minds across the country is,
Right.
yes, we want school choice, but we don't want to hand this responsibility over to the government to define the terms of that school choice. Where are you on that? Is it whatever the government decides, or are you going to stand strong and say we want school choice, but it's still our choice?
Yeah, no. I know that my wife and I we're part of and my daughter, we're part of the observant Jewish community over here, and it's very important for us to have school choice. I'll tell you. So in June of 2018, my wife and I were honored to be invited to the Trump White House to meet with the Trump officials to lobby for school choice. And at the end of that, we were broken up into different groups, and a half dozen of us went to meet with then Congressman Ron DeSantis, and I was the spokesman for the group. And I remember he had his arms crossed and his legs crossed. He was showing us his big cowboy boots, when we walked in. And I said to the congressman, I said, "Congressman, it's as part of the faith community, it's very important for our children to get a religious education. That for us, it's not a choice, it's actually mandatory. And if we had to spend our last dime that we made in our jobs, that we would put it into our children's education, religious education." And I told him that it was very expensive. And he asked me how expensive. And I turned to my wife, Emily, and I asked how expensive. And she said, $16,000 a year. I remember he opened his eyes wide and his mouth wide, and he went back in his seat. He didn't really have an expression before that while he was talking to me. And he had, and that's on the low end.
Right.
So I told him we pay our taxes and we need some of that back. But to answer your question, your concern, I remember meeting with my wife and the school administration before we sent our daughter to that school to make sure that she wasn't going to be learning anything that we believed was objectionable, which I'm sure that's what you're getting at. Because if the government does have control over what our kids learn, just as they do in public school, that we don't want our government to have that type of control.
Right.
In the state of Florida, there's a third party that institutes the vouchers, and the private schools here, as far as I understand, are free from are free from what the public schools go to. But one of the great things about the vouchers is that you have the opportunity to get your kids out of a failing public school, or
Right.
schools that are teaching something that you deem unethical or horrific to your beliefs. And so that's why I really support vouchers, because it gives us the opportunity for that choice, to make that choice as
Right.
parents. But no, I don't want to see the government handle those. Certainly not, 100%.
Yes.
And I'll also tell you another thing that I support very much so with regards to education initiatives. I would like to, as congressman, create a nationwide vocational training project where our kids, because so many of our kids that are going to high school, they're not planning on going to college, or whether they don't have the money or the means or the time or what have you. I know that I went through that as a kid. I did have the opportunity to go to university, but in our schools where I grew up in Yonkers, New York, each of our schools had a different vocation. So where I went in Roosevelt High School, they had media training, and Gordon High School had computer science, and Saunders had engineering, and there was another one with car shop and wood shop. And
Mhm.
what these things did is it gave us real skills that we would be able to use to get a job directly after high school.
Right.
So that those kids that are growing up today that are that are staying home and eating off their parents, and probably eating off our country as well. We don't want that. We want kids to be able to join the workforce immediately if they're not going to go for higher education. Higher education is great, but many times today, there's a lot of people that don't feel the need for it, or with other circumstances. So I think we need to instill something that gives them the skills that they can get a job immediately.
Yeah. As you know, the devil's always in the details, and that's why my dear friend Alice in Texas has been such a well, she's been getting under the hood and reading the details and stuff, and understanding the problem with the way school choice is done today. And as you said, it's your responsibility, and you want it to be your choice as a parent. I think the way some of these systems are doing it is, fine, you'll have school choice. Fine, we'll give you a voucher, but here's the terms and conditions, and here's the limited number of places where it can go, and the places that the money can go. Here's the curriculum that they must use. So at the end of the day, is it really a choice, or is it public school light? So I always encourage people: the devil's in the details. Be careful what you wish for.
I'm happy to say that our experience wasn't that for our school. I'm not saying that's for all schools, but as congressman, certainly I'll have a voice in what happens with that, and I would certainly frown upon on the government getting so involved that they start
Right.
teaching. They teach in public schools and the private schools. That just
Yeah.
defeats the entire purpose.
Exactly. Exactly. Well stated. That's awesome. So what else do people need to know about you as far as running?
Um, we're doing everything we need to do over here. We're raising money. We're going door to door. We're doing everything else that we need to do to win this. And really, again, I feel like with my background in national security and in counterterrorism, I really believe I need to serve, and I would have an immediate effect on things like foreign policy and national security, God willing, that I serve this coming January. If anybody wants to get involved in the campaign, donate, volunteer, they can go to www.kaufmanforcongress.com, and we'll be glad to have you aboard.
That's awesome. Joe, I appreciate you taking the time to get with me. I want to keep in touch with you and hear how the campaign's going as we get closer to your primary. And then as you win the primary, as you take on the one-term Democrat congressman that's there now.
Thanks so much. I
You bet,
appreciate you
Joe.
having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This segment brought to you by the Remembrance Project, theremembranceproject.org.